I began my work by sketching the finished painting, using the finished painting as a reference, trying to capture its mood and the character's expressive gaze. I used a B2 pencil. It allowed me to achieve soft lines and light shading without being too harsh. First, I marked out the general shape of the head, determining the facial axis of symmetry and the position of the eyes, nose, and lips. Next, I outlined the contours of the shoulders, arms, and book to maintain the proportions of the composition. I paid special attention to the eyes. They became the central element of the drawing, reflecting a thoughtful and slightly sad state. I gradually strengthened the contours, refining the shape of the hair and the folds of the clothing. I used an eraser to lighten the highlights on the face and individual strands of hair, creating subtle volume. The sketch turned out expressive, with slightly exaggerated features, emphasizing the character's personality. After completing the pencil drawing, I moved on to coloring using acrylic paints. I worked with 3 brushes, a thin one for details, a medium one for defining the facial features and hair, and a slightly larger one for the background and larger areas. I started with the background, covering it in rich dark blue and black, creating a contrast with the future bright hair. This helped set the mood of the entire composition a little nocturnal, a little dreamy, as if the heroine were sitting in silence, lost in thought. Then I moved on to the table. Here I used gray-green tones so as not to distract from the figure. I applied the paint evenly, letting the brush dry slightly to achieve a matte texture. After that, I turned to the book. The main color was dark blue with light black tones for the shadows. I applied the lettering and strokes with a thin brush, creating the effect of old, almost faded lines. The fountain pen next to the book added the feeling that the heroine had just been writing, but was lost in thought. I made the clothes a warm brown tone with a hint of burgundy. This color creates a feeling of comfort and depth. I used a medium brush, working on the shadows and folds with a dark shade from the same palette. I emphasized the collar with a purple-red tone to add expression. Next, I moved on to the most important element, the face. I worked especially carefully here. The skin was left almost white, with only light gray and bluish tones in places to convey shadow. This decision made the heroine a bit ghostly, as if she were part of her own thoughts, not the real world. I painted the lips a deep red with a light shadow along the contours to convey fatigue or thoughtfulness. Then it was time for the hair, the most striking element of the painting. I used a rich yellow as a base, adding orange and red lines for depth and dynamism. A thick brush helped convey the direction of the strands, and a thin one added sharpness and movement. The hair seems to glow against the darkness, highlighting the character's inner fire. Finally, I added small details, a cross on the neck, a small star on the hand, and carefully outlined the eyes and eyelashes with a fine brush. I enhanced the contours to separate the figure from the background and emphasize the facial expression, a combination of fatigue, sadness, and quiet contemplation. Critical assessment of the painting. The work is expressive and emotionally charged. The mood of thoughtfulness and the character's inner dialogue are successfully conveyed. The eyes are particularly striking. They are lively, full of emotion and mystery. The hair is a strong accent. The contrast between its bright light and the dark background creates a powerful compositional dynamic. The symbolism is also interesting. The cross, star, and book seem to reflect the heroine's inner world, a search for meaning, faith, and inspiration. However, there are some areas that could be improved. The proportions of the face are slightly distorted. The lower part appears slightly elongated, making the lips look less natural. More smooth transitions in the skin could also be added to soften the contrast between the white and the shadows. The table and book could have had more texture. It would have added depth. Overall, the style can be classified as expressionism with elements of symbolism. The painting conveys emotional energy, not striving for realism, but conveying an inner state through color and form. It may appeal to viewers who are drawn to themes of loneliness, reflection, and inner searching. Fans of neon contrasts and signature portraits will also appreciate this work.